guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We are your happy hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is February 28th, 2018, and you know what that means? That means that this lovely lady right here has a birthday that's coming up in 11 days on March 11th. Happy birthday to Leah early. But while we're talking about celebrations, we need to take a moment and wish happy anniversary to your favorite Brits and mine,
Tracy and
Sean and Tracy, who have done some absolutely lovely videos for Leah and Michelle on Resistance Chicks. They have eaten root beer floats for us for our cooking
the
show.
hard life.
They have sung Leah's songs. They have done the accent challenge. They are our lovely moderators. Sean and Tracy, happy anniversary to the both of you. I hope that it is an absolutely lovely anniversary tomorrow. Sean is taking off. He's the milkman that usually has to go to bed at like 3 in the afternoon. I think it's more like 7, but whatever, it's very early. Happy anniversary. We love you guys. God bless. We'll probably wish you happy anniversary at the end of the show as well, because you probably haven't logged on yet to see it. Now, the reason I said happy hosts is because before we were getting ready to come to you, going live a little bit earlier than normal, Leah was getting a little bit angry. She was getting out her angry eyes, talking about this censorship, because every time we cue things up, we go to type in the title, we pick out a picture and so forth, and we never really get to say exactly what we want to say because of censorship. I don't know if you guys understand. Some of you don't like Alex Jones. We love Alex Jones. But the real deal is they are trying to kick him off of YouTube, off of the internet. They are going at it so hard. So whether you agree with what Alex says or not, you need to recognize that this censorship that is happening is real, and it is significant, and it is extremely dangerous. And Leah and I are always ready at the drop of a hat to have this entire thing shut down. We were just talking about how I need to get our website up and running so you guys will be able to find us, but you need to know that you can always find us on Facebook and Twitter, and I know a lot of you don't do Facebook, and a lot of you don't do Twitter, but there could come a point where we will only be able to broadcast live on Facebook, and you will have to create yourself a little incognito Facebook account.
Our Mass Faith 3 channel, there's absolutely no reason why it shouldn't be live right now. We don't have a strike against us. We have been working with them for
We have no strikes
over
against us.
At this point, I just know that they're just sitting behind the screen like, I have all the power. I don't like what these people are saying. And so I'm not going to allow them to continue to live stream, and I'm not going to put that channel, because the algorithm with that channel puts us in a different tier of YouTubers to get our videos out to more people.
Right.
So they know that, while we have this smaller channel that you're on right now, which we're so glad that you're here, it's just frustrating. And like you said, I was watching Alex Jones yesterday. He had 2 strikes against him. They were getting ready to get rid of all of his videos, shut his entire channel down.
Really scary stuff, guys.
And they took away his second strike. They did not take away his first strike. The first strike was because he was talking that he wasn't saying that the children in the Parkland shooting were crisis actors. However, he was saying that he was stumbling over his lines, and it was looking like he was definitely
Which is
fed
true.
lines.
And so they said it was bullying. That's not bullying. It's fact.
Okay, so this child is 18 years old. He's not a child anymore. He's a young man. I don't know. I'm going to start with this article here. We're going to kind of keep going on. Don't worry. God is in control, and that's number one. God is in control of what we do, and you know that when the enemy comes in like a flood, God's going to raise up a standard for you, and that you're winning. And the point is that they will crumble and they will fall. We just have to keep holding the line together.
Hold the line.
YouTube says that they accidentally deleted conservative videos and took down conservative channels.
Accidentally? Really?
Yeah. So this is from Bloomberg article that says it's time to regulate Google and Facebook, and I'm just hoping that if people are dying on their swords or whatever, that eventually out of this Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, unfortunately, as conservatives, we are not for internet or any sort of or libertarian-minded people. We don't want the government. We don't like the government into anything. But when you have things like utilities, they have to be monitored by the government so they don't price gouge.
Right.
And Facebook and Twitter have become a utility. YouTube has definitely become a utility. And for somebody at the top to control the dissemination of information on a whim is more than unfair. So YouTube's new moderators brought in to spot fake news, misleading and extreme videos stumbled in one of their first major tests, mistakenly removing some clips and channels in the midst of a nationwide debate on gun control. The Google division said in December it would assign more than 10,000 people to moderate content after a year of scandals over fake and inappropriate content on the world's largest video site. So I'm guessing they're going to take all the videos down about aliens, all the videos down, you know.
And who cares? Here's the thing.
About
if something
ghosts,
wasn't actually doing any harm, why do you need to take it down?
But it did harm. It did harm the election. It harmed Hillary Clinton's chance and the globalist chance. So in the wake of the February 14th shooting in Parkland, Florida, some YouTube moderators mistakenly removed several videos and some channels from right-wing pro-gun video producers and outlets. Some YouTube channels recently complained about their accounts being pulled entirely. On Wednesday, the outline highlights accounts including Titus Frost that were banned from the video site. Frost tweeted on Wednesday that a survivor of the shooting, David Hogg, is an actor. Jerome Corsi of right-wing conspiracy website Milford said on Tuesday that YouTube had taken down one of his videos and disabled his live stream. Shutting entire channels would have marked a sweeping policy change for YouTube, which typically only removes channels in extreme circumstances. It's not extreme circumstances anymore. I mean, you've got it. I mean, there's weird child porn stuff up there. There's just all kinds of weird stuff on YouTube, but their main focus, their main drive is taking off libertarian and conservative sites, and that's us. So of course it's one of those things where if you don't see us here tomorrow, then try to find us somewhere else.
Well, it's one of those things. We could be really upset about our other channel, our main channel, being censored, but we always say in our family that don't kick the donkey. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of half wonder if us going live on our smaller channel, the Resistance Chicks channel, isn't protecting us from the, I mean, they are pulling entire channels. So What lost all of his videos. IPP TV in Poland, we just did an interview with last week. That video's up. You guys can check it out on Make Poland Great Again. And
they
their
lost
channel,
60,000
they lost all of their
videos.
They lost everything.
Right.
And so when I stop and I go, God, why is it that we aren't on our Mass Faith 3 channel? It's possible that this is just a blip, that this is happening and they are going to attack all the big channels, and if we're just going live on Resistance Chicks, then maybe we can just fly under the radar. Maybe, you never know.
No.
So we'll see. But I don't want to kick the donkey when it comes to this, and I just trust the Lord that he's going to take care of it. Leah's a little bit more on edge about this than I am, because I'm like, you know what?
You're not reading the articles I'm reading.
Well, maybe it's better that one of us is not, so I can stay sound-minded and just trust the Lord.
All right, I want to play for you this clip on from Joe Rogan on some censorship. He knows YouTube executives. He eats dinner with them. I don't know why he doesn't try to convince them of, you know.
An example to me, or your conversation with Sam Harris become an example to me.
So this is Douglas Murray. I'm sorry, I should tee this up. He's talking with Douglas Murray. He's a great intellectual. You guys probably know him in the UK. He's the guy we were talking about before, trying to come up with his name. And he had an interview with Sam Harris, and it was flagged as like hate speech, and so
of how squirrely things have gotten lately with the way people interpret conversations about ideas. Right. Because of this, Jamie, pull that thing up. This is a tweet that someone sent out, and he got a strike, a community guideline strike, just for listening, just for putting you on his playlist. A conversation between Sam Harris and you, and this man, or I don't know if it's a man. I just assumed I'm a problem. I'm part of the problem, part of the patriarchy. PTRKCCX on Twitter. That is his screen name, his or her or Zur screen name on Twitter, and got a community guideline strike for just putting this. Now, I brought this up I was having dinner with some friends, one of them who used to work at Google, and someone who's there was a highly ranked person at YouTube. I brought this up, and the exact quote was, that was because it's hate speech. And I said, you said that so flippantly. I go, please tell me the contents of the conversation. Do you know what they talked about? I go, how did you say that? She goes, well, I'm sure if someone marked it as a community guideline, right, that, or as a strike, a community strike. What is it called? A community guideline strike? Yeah, that they must be hate speech. I'm like, do you understand? This is Douglas Murray and Sam Harris. I bet that's not what the conversation was about.
I bet it wasn't too. I'm trying to think what we did talk about now. It's making me nervous. I mean, but I know it definitely wasn't hate speech by any sane definition of those words. This sort of thing is very disturbing to me.
Very disturbing.
You notice it happening with other people, of course, and that's disturbing enough. It's more disturbing, of course, when it happens to you, but it's slightly surreal. I mean, I know Sam Harris a bit. Not a hateful person. My most sort of yogic, calm, blissed out West Coast of America friend. And I'm pretty amazed that anyone at Google or anywhere else would think that anything that could come out of his mouth was hate speech, unless you decided that hate speech is just anything you personally don't like, or that words don't matter anymore.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that there's an agenda that people who work in these, we don't even have to name the organizations.
They're using the Southern Poverty Law Center now.
But certain organizations are extremely left-leaning.
Videos.
And, I mean, it's probably better than being extremely right-leaning.
Sure.
It really is. It's probably better than them being white supremacist, white nationalist, hate groups. It's probably far better that they're radical lefties. But it becomes a problem when you're doing things like that, because things like that limit free speech and they limit the free discussion of ideas. I didn't listen to your conversation. I think I listened to a little bit of it, but I didn't listen to enough of it to know whether or not you guys started screaming out the N-word halfway in.
I'm sure I'd remember.
I'm sure you would. I would have heard about it.
Blushing more at this moment.
I had another thing that I talked about with this same person. I brought up Jordan Peterson, and you know that there's issues with every time he's on podcasts. The podcasts get flagged for demonetization, and the exact words were, "He's a troublemaker." And I'm like, what in the fuck are you talking about? Like, are you listening to his conversations? He is very articulate, and he's extremely careful going over these ideas that I think we should all be discussing. So to call this hate speech or to call someone a troublemaker, to me, it symbolizes
if you're a troublemaker.
What we're dealing with today. This is a very strange time.
It's a very strange time because I think we showed you.
You can't be a troublemaker. It's illegal. You're not allowed to be a troublemaker on the internet. The internet's full of troublemakers. That's all it is.
I didn't know who this person was until I guess other people know who he is. His name is Logan Paul. He went to some Japanese forest and filmed a kid hanging. He got a small 90-day probation, but he makes $1 million a month on YouTube.
That can't even be real.
And so YouTube has invited him back, said, I know, you know, whatever. So what I'm saying is that all these kids do this. If you watch, I spent an afternoon looking at a couple of his videos. All he does is like burn mattresses and all he does is cause trouble, like real trouble in the real world. Okay. But these are the kind of people that YouTube wants on because he's not political.
Right.
Because he's not, you can be as dirty and disgusting and perverted as you want.
They let all, like you said earlier, they let all the pornography slip right through.
Right. As long as you don't cause any trouble. Right. And what's absolutely insane about this is, we're winning on that front. What's absolutely crazy about this is that if you're in China, and I'm going to show you some stuff, we're going to talk about China tonight. If you're in China, they censor what you think, they censor what you say, they censor what you do.
Completely censored.
But they are taking over Hollywood. Yep. They're owning Hollywood. They're trying to brainwash us into thinking that it's okay to be a Chinese communist.
Right.
And in doing that, you do think to yourself, well, maybe we do need to censor speech.
Yeah.
Maybe it's okay because China does it and China's the good guy, right? So this is a whole brainwashing that is happening in our culture and in our minds. So in this, I want to talk about Parkland, and if they take down the video, they take down the video. But there is so much craziness going around this, and it's not, here's the thing. YouTube, whoever watches my video, I'm not mad at the children. I'm not putting the children down. But we talked about it. CNN, the Women's March, George Soros, every lefty on the block is using children.
They're taking these. Let's pretend these are children. These are from Sean and Tracy. Tracy made these Leah and Michelle dolls. So here's Leah. This is what they're doing. They're grabbing these kids, and I'm CNN. Can't hit me. Can't hit me. Kid, victim. Can't hit me. Can't hit me. Can't say anything. It's me. Nope. Well,
right.
I mean, you can't. They are using these children as human shields.
Right.
So that if you want to say anything against CNN, if you want to say anything against what these children are saying, because the children aren't saying it. They're being scripted. They're being given lines by all of these. How many actors have donated? How many big private donors have donated?
Well,
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$500,000, Oprah $500,000, and then this article another
$1 million. So all of those people, George Clooney, Oprah, you are all using these children as human shields because the kids come out and they give your lines, they give your thoughts. You know these kids aren't running these websites. You know this David Hogg is not running his own Twitter. Those are not his own words. He's not saying things against Alex Jones. He wouldn't know what to say if it hit him in the face. Okay, he's being given and fed these lines, and so they're these bullies that are hiding behind children because you can't say anything against those kids. They're victims. They were at that shooting.
So this is a BuzzFeed. This is a BuzzFeed article, and BuzzFeed is just telling you exactly what we've been telling you. I don't think they have a problem with it, but I have a problem with it. The Parkland teens fighting for gun control have the backing of these huge.
The children, then they hide behind them.
They murder the children and then they hide behind the ones that they didn't.
Backing of these huge organizing groups. Some of the largest organizing groups in the country are helping the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting survivors. Not even 2 weeks ago, they had one another on social media. So here's a picture, and this is highly disturbing to me because. Everywhere I look, they have a handful of kids. I don't know if you
guys can see these beautiful smiles and how happy these kids are. They are all very, very happy.
This isn't a time to be happy and laughing. We're going to be in the air at 5, but everyone better be tweeting March for Our Lives. Several large progressive organizations and donors and a high-powered public relations firm are backing the March for Our Lives movement. The same ones who back the March for Women, which is quickly evolving from a student-run social media effort to end gun violence into one backed by some of the most influential activists in the country. And this is from BuzzFeed, okay? In the days after the shooting in Parkland, Florida that killed 17 people, the teenage survivors of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas were impossible to ignore. Now, only a portion of them. Everybody else is fine to ignore, which is not fair. They blanketed cable news coverage, built a massive following on Twitter and social media, and Twitter has verified their accounts, but not the pro-gun accounts, by the way.
Hang on, to rephrase for those of you that may not understand what you just said. They have verified the accounts of these students that are out marching and campaigning for gun control. But there are also other students that are for actual real answers, for solving the problems that makes these children want to go into schools. Those kids are also speaking out loudly, but their voices are being censored, and Twitter will not verify their accounts. Same school, same kind of victims, and yet because they're not pushing the CNN mainstream media agenda, Twitter won't verify their accounts.
All right, so you've got Everytown, Giffords, Move On. MoveOn.org is George Soros, by the way. Planned Parenthood, by the way. Planned Parenthood, as I put this on my Facebook, over 3,000 persons went into Planned Parenthood last year alone, and this year alone, and this year they will too, as well, is what I mean to say. And those 300,000, over 300,000 people will not come back out. But you can go to an NRA meeting, and you come out perfectly fine. You can go to an NRA-sponsored gun class, and no one's ever been killed ever by the NRA, and no mass shooting has ever been done by an NRA member. However, Planned Parenthood wants to say, let's save children's lives, which is absolutely
find that a bit ironic.
So I guess this Giffords was started by U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords that fights gun violence, is working with Everytown and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America to plan the main march on Washington as well as sister rallies across the country. With the event scheduled to happen in less than a month, a spokesman for Giffords told BuzzFeed's news organization, "We'll be lending support in any way the students need." This isn't about the students, by the way. March for Our Lives is big news. You can now see if there's a march in your area. If not, create your own, thanks to Everytown. Everytown for Gun Safety, bankrolled mostly by Michael Bloomberg, recently secured a $1 million donation from the entrepreneur and philanthropist Eli Broad. Move On said it will encourage its millions of members to follow and promote the March for Our Lives movement on social media and intend to rally. A spokesman for Planned Parenthood says that the group is teaching and hosting trainings of young activists. Do you see what I'm saying? To keep the momentum going and so it doesn't burn out.
It's not training of young activists. It's just training of children to be, like on repeat.
We showed you the Obama thing. They've been training people. Every time I see somebody now, I know they're being trained. So it's really, it's quite, you've got this guy with Bernie Sanders, 2 Jews talking about substantial change, #never again. This would have never happened if the FBI had followed up on even one of if you do not enforce, let me just keep saying this, if you don't enforce the laws in the books, new laws won't change.
Right.
All right, Mexico.
Because those laws won't be enforced.
Has one of the biggest gun control laws, like stringent gun control laws, and yet people get thrown into, mass graves by the cartel there.
Right.
And you've got the American Federation of Teachers, which helped bus students and their parents to Tallahassee multiple times last week, are now assisting with the March for Our Lives rally. And I'm just concerned, and this is what I want Donald Trump to not cave, because he's caving in a lot of things. He just said today, forget due process. I want to get the guns out of the hand of the mentally ill.
That's a scary line.
However, what he was saying is that I would have wanted to get the guns out of this young man. Well, when there's multiple red flags, multiple people calling, he should have, the police dropped the ball, or he would have been in a background check that would not have allowed him to buy a gun.
Right.
So we're going to talk about Broward County and some of their crazy things going on there, but read some comments. I don't know what to say right now.
All right, let me get back to the comments here. Will says the NRA being a lobby may be interfered with through reform on lobby money. They will come after our guns through redefining psychological thresholds. I agree with that. Storm Bear says legal gun ownership, credible background checks, and a license to carry. Human beings have an evil side. They're killers of their own species as well as all others. And you think sharks are dangerous? ? Let's see. Chris says, I have PTSD. He served in our military. And he says, I have a mental illness. Will they take my firearms? Speaking of Chris put together a video I'm going to play at the end of the show. I'm going to play a clip of it about men being men. And he has a channel that started out as a gun channel, and I hope I'm not ratting you out here, but he wants to switch to philosophy, not only because he has a lot to offer, but because they are coming after the gun channels. And so I think that that's a good reason to kind of want to shift gears. But I want to show you guys something really quickly here before Leah moves on. And that is our, we mentioned this earlier, but just so you can get a visual here, this is our channel. Right here. See where it says community guideline status? You currently, it says you have 0 community guideline strikes. You have 0 copyright strikes. And yet right here where it says live streaming, it's disabled. That is 100% censorship. And I think, Leah, before you move on, maybe I want to play that Matt Bevin video if you will stay on the same topic. Or do you want to play that? Or do you want to do that first?
Well, I just... we're talking about everybody wants to arm teachers now. Well, teacher in custody after shots fired at a Georgia high school. A teacher was in custody after police responded to reports of shots fired at a high school in Georgia. The Dalton Police Department tweeted around 12:30 today that a subject believed to be a teacher had barricaded in a classroom at Dalton High School. We don't know anything else about it, but that the teacher is in custody.
And as soon as that came out, I think it was Justin Hughes that sent that to me today. and I didn't even look at the article. I didn't at first. And my first thought was this is their scheduled plan, because they knew that the intelligent, sane people are going to go, you know what, in order to protect our students, we need teachers that are armed. And so they have to discredit that, because I know some people have been coming out and saying, well, what if you have these crazy teachers, these crazy teachers? They can't have weapons either. Well, if a teacher is crazy, they should not be in the position of being a teacher in the first place.
What's so crazy? This is what I don't understand about people. If you're if a teacher would shoot a student, they would do much worse than shoot them. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay if they're there as long as they don't have a gun.
Right.
Why do people think that?
I have no idea.
So wait on a second on your Matt Bevin, because I think we're going to get into some answers.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about the problem, and then we'll switch to the answer.
Okay.
But
seriously, that to me, this is a false flag. Whatever it is with the teacher, whether they
absolutely,
I don't know, if they drug legal. All I know is we have been saying it. Expect this to come. If you want to arm teachers, they're going to come out with crazy teachers that are going to start shooting up schools and stuff. I don't know how they do it. You all know. I don't know.
Some black guy
will make it happen.
Some black guy on Facebook was saying, "Listen up, black people. You really want to give up your guns? I mean, we had slavery in this country, and if all the slaves had guns, there might not have been slavery. I don't know if they would have actually gotten together to fight.
They took all of the Jews' weapons in order to have the Holocaust. If the Jews had their weapons, there would not have been a Holocaust, because they would have fought back."
All right, so when we're talking about having your guns, why do you need to have guns? It's for many reasons, but this is one of them. Because your government is only as good as the men and women in the government, and if they're corrupt, then they're not going to be able to protect you. Listen to this. Armed kidnapping, narcotics trafficking, extortion. State Attorney General investigating 66 cases of misconduct under the Broward County Sheriff Israel. I mean, they had 74 people in the Florida House sign for his dismissal. The governor has asked for an inspector to go down and check things out, but everyone's calling for him to be fired. It's always the loudest guy in the room who ends up having the most to hide. This is the likely tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Broward County Sheriff's Office. The national spotlight will help uncover much that the incapable local reporters don't have the guts or the moxie to write. Certainly more to come. There are more than 66 investigations by the Broward County State Attorney's Office and Broward County Sheriff's deputies and employees, ranging from drug trafficking to kidnapping, since 2012. All the internal investigations occurred under Sheriff Israel, whose office is now under investigation. And approximately 66 Broward County Sheriff Office deputies and employees, including supervisory personnel, were arrested for, charged with, and or convicted of crimes. 66 deputies or employees.
Since when?
Since 2012. That run the gamut from armed kidnapping, battery, assault, falsifying records, official misconduct, narcotics trafficking, and other crimes involving dishonesty and violence in the years immediately preceding 2013, when Jermaine was killed. Most of the offenses on the list occurred in the years between 2012 and 2013. That's just in 1 year period. So thanks to True Pundit for sourcing, getting that out there. But yeah, that's pretty insane. Now, get this.
Are you really not taking any responsibility for the multiple red flags that were brought to the attention of the Broward Sheriff's Office about this shooter before the incident, whether it was people near him, close to him, calling the police on him?
Jake, I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercised my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked... Yes, Jake. There's a lot of things we've done throughout this. This is you.
So here's my thing.
It's interesting that guy's trying to throw him under the bus, though.
My thing, Jake Tapper. Every once in a while, he does hit the clock right. But my initial reaction and my gut says they've got to throw the Broward County Sheriff's Office under the bus, and the Broward County Sheriff isn't getting the memo because they have to cover up for the FBI. This is the FBI's fault. The FBI got two solid tips.
So that makes total sense. CNN is going to try to cover up for the FBI.
CNN's covering for the patsy. He's the patsy.
And he hasn't gotten the memo that he's a patsy. And the rest of his deputies in
eventually he'll get
it.
Somebody will threaten him and he'll say, you got to fall on your sword now.
Right. You don't measure a person's leadership by a deputy not going into these deputies received the training they needed.
Maybe you measure somebody's leadership by whether or not they protect the community. In this case, you've listed 23 incidents before the shooting involving the shooter, and still nothing was done to keep guns out of his hands, to make sure that the school was protected, to make sure you were keeping an eye on him. Your deputy at the school failed. I don't understand how you can sit there and claim amazing leadership.
Jake, on 16 of those cases, our deputies did everything right. Our deputies have done amazing things. We've taken this, in the 5 years I've been sheriff, we've taken the Broward Sheriff's Office to a new level. I work with some of the bravest people I've ever met. One person, at this point, one person didn't do what he should have done. It's horrific. The victims here, the families, I pray for them every night. It makes me sick to my stomach that we had a deputy that didn't go in, because I know if I was there, if I was on that wall, I would have been the first in.
I think there are a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people, sir, who think that there are a lot of mistakes other than that one deputy. Do you think that if the Broward Sheriff's Office had done things differently, this shooting might not have happened?
Listen, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books.
I don't know what that means. There's 17 dead people, and there's a whole long list of things your department could have done differently.
How could listen? That's what after action reports are. That's for lessons learned reports are for. I have entered into conversation with Chuck Wexler of the police.
No, that after action is after like a specific incident. What Jake Tapper rightfully was talking about was the lead up to this incident, and that's why this whole call for gun control is out of control.
But you guys, I have to tell you, watching that, and I had not seen that clip until Leah just played it here, so I'm seeing it with you guys. My gut says, like you were saying, why, when Leah always talks about the broken clock, this is not a broken clock. That guy, Jake Tapper, is going hard after Sheriff Israel right now. That means he's been given a talking point. This is our fall guy. This is the patsy. This is what we want. Things that are on CNN, they're only if they're there because the powers that be want to disseminate that information to the entire country and the world. Okay? So what they're trying to disseminate, the information they're trying to put out there, is that Israel is the fall guy. It's all his fault, and it's not the FBI's fault.
Why aren't they grilling the FBI? Why don't they have the FBI in there grilling them? Why isn't there article after article after article after article? Because obviously this is Broward County, yes, but the FBI has way more leniency. On January 5th,
and the FBI was given an exact tip. They knew exactly what this kid was intending, right, and they did not transfer it to the Florida field office.
Right.
That was not a ball that was dropped. That was a ball that was held tightly to the vest.
That's what we call a false flag, when they either allow something to happen or orchestrate something to happen.
No, they allowed this to happen for sure.
All right, so get this. He
Take me off of YouTube.
was so upset
Facebook,
because
whatever.
Everybody was talking about public records show 39 calls from Cruz's house over a 6-year period, but Sheriff Israel says kept saying that there were no more than 23 calls. The CNN has repeatedly asked the sheriff's office to explain the discrepancy, sending emails and attempting to reach the agency. So I guess Dana Lesh said there were 39 calls. She inaccurately described them as visits. The next day at a police conference in the wake of growing public criticism, Israel said there were 23 calls, but public records say that there were 39 calls. So
That's
really
a pretty
can't
big deal.
get any...
One of those calls, this young man called on himself.
He called on himself and he said, I just got in a fight. My mom died recently, basically saying I'm not doing very well. He called on himself. Nobody was getting this young man the help that he needed.
Right.
Nobody was helping him. The school let him down. The school just said, hey, we know he's crazy. We know he's dangerous. Just don't let him wear a backpack. Why nobody marched this young man into a mental health facility is beyond me. And I know why, because in Broward County, they needed to get their numbers down from school to prison numbers. So they let all these criminals go, and he was one of those. And like we talked about before, a 5-year-old can't come in with a plastic knife.
Patriot Gallery.
They also could have let him know that he could check himself in.
Right.
You know, they could take care of him in a hospital.
Right.
But there's no excuse for the sheriff because we've all been through the fire drills, right, at school. The drill's there, so you're ready when it happens. They went through the shooting drill.
Right. Yeah.
There is no excuse because they were ready.
That's a really good point. They and Leah's got some footage that she's going to show you of these sheriffs.
Did the drill say stand outside and let all the kids die? I mean, that's a terrible drill.
Where these sheriff deputies go into mosques and tell them all about their rights. Leah's going to play that, but my point is they practice these things. They are prepared. They have been practicing these school drills for a couple of years on a regular basis. Are you telling me that security guard, what's his name? The off-duty armed guy that didn't go in. We should know his name. Are you telling me that he wasn't part of any of those drills? You know, he had to have been part of these drills. He's on campus when those drills are taking place. He's integral to those drills because guess what? He is the only line of defense between a shooter and the children. He's got to be practicing going in.
So I want to bring this woman up. I hadn't heard about this woman. I think this is a different woman that called. I don't think she was the one who called the FBI. This is a neighbor who was deeply concerned.
My husband and I both knew that it was not over, that we would eventually see him one day on the news wearing an orange jumpsuit, being charged with murder.
Joelle Guarino called 911 in February 2016 to say her neighbor Nicholas Cruz was going to shoot up a school. She didn't know when, but she says she begged the officer to do something.
He basically told me that there was nothing he could do.
You can't report that to anyone?
He carried out a threat unless something happened. And after he left, I just felt completely helpless and frustrated. I didn't know where else to turn.
Her son had showed her an Instagram post from Cruz showing an AR-15 style rifle with Cruz saying he couldn't wait to buy one when he turned 18. And soon after, another post saying he wanted to shoot up a school. The alarmed Guarino, who watched Cruz grow up alongside her kids, flashed back on all the signs of violence she says Cruz showed over the years and immediately thought he was capable of going on a rampage.
I was really afraid for my family, for my animals, for myself.
Guarino says Cruz was 10 when he hit her son with a rock in the eye. Then, she says, there was the killing of toads in her yard and the shooting of squirrels and birds with his BB gun. There was a time when she felt sorry for Cruz, when she says his mother kept the refrigerator and the pantry under lock and key. But Guarino says it was Cruz's menacing facial expression as he stood over her dog Max while the dog was convulsing and foaming at the mouth that convinced her that this teenager had a very dark side.
He was bending over my dog with a wild look on his face. He just looked excited. He was happy when he finally looked up and saw me. His whole demeanor changed. His attitude towards my dog changed. He went from a wild look to concerned.
The signs of his violent outbursts could be seen on the walls of his room, she says, which were covered with holes punched by Cruz.
When you think of those 17 people who died and their families.
Oh, I feel horrible. My heart breaks for them. I wish he would have told me something can be done if you make enough noise. He didn't. He said there was nothing that could be done. And I believed him. I wish I didn't, but I did. I'm very angry. I'm very angry.
And as authorities look into these missed warning signs, the sheriff's office is looking into the handling of two.
So here's the thing, like, everybody wants gun control, but this is insane. This is mental patient control. This is like literally like letting Tasmanian devil out, running around, and then you're blaming everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, they're blaming the NRA, and the kids are just riding the wave of fame. They don't know what they're doing, the ones at Stoneman, Marjorie Stoneman.
Well, everybody's saying it was mistakes, it was missed. No, it wasn't missed, because if you have a bomb threat, somebody called in and they said there's a bomb threat, so it's looked into and you shut the school down.
Right.
Somebody calls and says somebody might shoot up your school, then you close the school and check it out.
Right.
I mean, it's a part of the drill. It's just the drill, and the drill comes back to they did it on purpose, because there was a drill, because there are things in place since Columbine. It proves that. You gotta remember, this is Fort Lauderdale. Hollywood is right next to Fort Lauderdale. Miami Beach is right down the street. Okay, so you've got drugs, you got cartels, you got gangsters. Now, who buys off police officers? Drug cartels, gangsters. So these guys stood down. So somebody else could do this, or they were in a plot together.
Yep.
One way or another, these drills, the fact they did drill, and the fact that schools have been prepared since Columbine, means that they are guilty somehow.
Right.
And another piece here is that he did have like a therapist, and I guess I'm not sure what year, 2016. So just a couple years ago, an unidentified peer counselor alerted the Stoneman Douglas Schools resource deputy that Cruz possibly drank gasoline in an attempt to commit suicide. He was cutting himself and he wished to purchase a gun. So when you put all those together, that's a person who wants to commit suicide at the very least. And then an investigator with the Florida's Department of Children and Families spoke to Cruz, but his therapist ultimately advised that he was not currently a threat to himself or to others and did not need to be committed. So there are so
there's
many,
another person that dropped
somebody
the ball.
needed to keep these things in line, and his mother, who obviously is weird, who supposedly said that she was on a budget, so she kept her refrigerator and pantry locked. I don't know people in government housing that have locks on their refrigerator or their pantry. This is a woman who she kept, I guess from what I understand, there's more to this interview with the woman we just saw. She said that she was once friends with Cruz's mother, but that friendship broke off. And she said that what would happen is she would call the police on Cruz and then tell the police, well, nothing happened. So she'd call, get him to come out, and then say there was no violence, there was nothing. And so she would be lying to cover up Cruz's behavior and say, and what this neighbor said was that Cruz's mom would blame everyone else for Cruz's behavior except for him and herself. So it's like, you can see that he grew up in a weird, demented dysfunctional household. Nobody lives in Broward County and can't afford to feed 2 children. You know what I mean? Like, they lived in an upper middle class neighborhood. She wasn't having a hard time with the grocery bill. She was abusing the children and using food as a way to abuse them. It's very sick. So this mother twisted their brains. Too bad she's dead, or we would be needing to interview her, you know. Anyways, go ahead now. I want Michelle to play Matt Blevin's response. We're going to start to go on the offense here on gun control and things like that, because I watched a Pierce Morgan interview with this beautiful black NRA instructor. I think she's an instructor. She's like Miss Texas. I'm going to mess it up. But anyways, she's just awesome. And I don't know why I don't have it up for you to watch. But anyways, Pierce Morgan grilled her and said, you know, gave all the list of all the gun deaths in different countries and said, you know, China only has 2 gun deaths a year. I was like, you're really going to bring China into this? You're really going to bring China into this? And that's what's made me so mad, because, like, seriously, China rips babies out of people's wombs and sterilizes people and puts people in jail. And you want to talk about, well, they're great because they don't have gun deaths. They kill their own people and harvest their organs.
Right. All right, so for those of you that didn't see the video that I played of Governor Matt Bevin, and I love that he's from Kentucky, because Kentucky is really pushing out some absolutely amazing representatives and
Representative Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, Ron Paul.
Leaders.
Yeah, great leaders.
So this guy came out and he was interviewed, and the video had like millions and millions of shares, where he was saying,
we shared it, you played it.
That I know, I just want to retell him. Where he was saying that this problem is systemic because of our society, video games, all of that, and because it went viral, here he is talking about foster kids and stuff like that. And this lady comes up and asks this question. You're going to hear her ask this question. And his answer is so calm. It's so even keeled. And throughout, like, she's like, you can't see her face, but he's saying, like, you know, she's laughing and smirking and stuff. And I am so infuriated by these people that go in and give these talking points. They're given them by someone, I know. They can't think for themselves, because anyone with half a brain would be able to see that his arguments here are incredibly sound-minded. So, without further ado, I'm gonna...
I'm Evan Davies, and I'm just an independent consultant. I'm not affiliated with any organization. I really admire the work that you're doing to help foster children, and you've said a number of times that, you know, the children's lives is most important. We had a murder a little while ago where 17 people, including many kids, were murdered in their schools. And how do you reconcile the children's lives are most important with the comments you've made to the media about it's naive and premature to talk about gun control, and that it's culture and not guns that is causing these horrible things?
I'll tell you exactly how I reconcile that. First of all, a month ago in Kentucky, we had a very similar situation. Made a very concerted effort to make sure that we removed the media circus from the healing process.
Wow.
So within 24 to 48 hours, you're probably not even aware, most people aren't, that I had a 15-year-old come into a school in Kentucky last month and shoot 16 children at point-blank range, 2 of whom died. A set of twins were both shot and taken to a level 1 trauma center. They lived. This is very real to me. I've sat with these families. You also probably are not aware of the fact that I buried my oldest child. Died under different circumstances, but went to school and didn't come home. She was 17 years old. I know exactly, not exactly, it's not possible to know exactly what another person's going through, but I know exactly what it feels like to bury your oldest child. I know what the impact is on a family. I don't come at this with a sense of sympathy, but empathy. The point that I've made that's been largely misconstrued, I'll reaffirm with you and tell you exactly why it comes from, where it comes from. This idea, just as solving this issue is able to be solved with a single law or rule or change, is naive and delusional. And so we shouldn't allow ourselves to entertain naive and delusional thoughts. It is part of a broader construct, just as this issue is. And the point that I made, that I'll reiterate, is that if we think that a part of what we are seeing is not a cultural problem, we're kidding ourselves. And the point that I've made is this. What has shifted in the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? It's not the percentage of guns that we find in homes. And you can give me a statistic that there's now more guns. Fair enough, I'll submit that that may be true. I'm not going to argue with you.
But it's not
But the reality is there's fewer homes that have guns in them than there were 50 years ago when children didn't walk into schools and shoot themselves and shoot each other. That's a fact. You can confirm that. But I'll tell you this. When I was a kid, kids brought guns to school. Kids brought guns on the school bus. Kids brought guns to school in their own vehicles. Kids didn't shoot each other with them. So some things have not changed. What has changed? We as a culture, as a society, and it's very germane to this topic as well, we don't value human life like we did. We remove increasingly respect for the dignity of other people. You look at how rampant pornography is, the degradation and disrespect for women and for human life in general. It is so systemic. People of our age have not been exposed like our children have been.
True.
There's not a child in America that hasn't been exposed to pornography, I guarantee you, if they're above the age of 12. That's a fact. It is so systemic, it's horrific. And it desensitizes us at every turn. And so we're desensitized to the value and dignity of human life. We're desensitized through, and this is to the heart of what I said that you seem to take exception with, is that through violent video games, where literally you are encouraged, and you can roll your eyes all you want, man, but I will say this. You explain to me the value of a game that encourages somebody to go back and finish them off, where you get points for kill counts, and you slaughter people. We're desensitizing people to the value of life. And we see it through the lyrics and music, and we see it through television shows, and we see it through movies. We see it in the fact that the mores of this nation have changed. We see it through the fact that we increasingly want to remove any sense of moral authority from everything. I'll tell you again, we could have 1,000 sidebars, and you could agree or disagree as it relates to what I'm about to say. But in a nation where over the last 40 years, we've aborted 50-something million children, and we have multiple states with medically assisted suicide being provided by doctors. At both ends of the life spectrum, we're losing the value for life that we once historically had. You can say that's good, you can say it's bad, but it's a reality. You couple that with the fact that all these other things are changing, that we're removing any sense of authority. It used to be that you had different levels of authority starting in the home itself. Only 1/3 of children in a recent Pew study say that they have no interaction, for all intents and purposes, with their own parents when their parents live in the home. They say their parents have no clue what they're even learning in school.
Right.
There was a study recently in an article that was derived from that and other studies that was in the Atlantic. I encourage you to look it up, about the impact. And again, you can smirk and you can smile, but as somebody who's an independent consultant, I find it remarkable that you're so smug and you're so disregarding of my opinion, when in fact I'm just trying to have an honest dialogue with you, based on a fair question. But I will say this. Look at this article in the Atlantic. This article in the Atlantic talks about how young people are increasingly becoming suicidal and depressed because of the use of social media and the use of these personal devices and on-screen time. All these are part of a cultural issue. In this cultural issue, if we're not addressing it, we are kidding ourselves, because it also affects this issue we came here to talk about today, which is why these homes are broken, why so many children are finding themselves in government care, which is not the best solution. The government should not be raising our children, period. It just shouldn't.
I love it.
The fact of the matter is, we need people in the position like I am. And I had this same conversation less than an hour ago with the President of the United States. And I said to him, he should, I should. This whole room was full of cabinet secretaries and governors of other states. Those of us that are in a position of influence and the ability to say something, shame on us if we don't step up and call people to a higher authority. And there will always be those, including many in the media, whoever the messenger is, they're going to find the imperfection in that messenger. So if the messenger says we should do X, Y, Z as it relates to this issue or adoption and foster care, people will say, well, who is this person? They're an imperfect person. Well, so is every one of us. There's not a perfect person in America, but that doesn't mean we don't strive for perfection. There's not a perfectly morally upright person in America. That doesn't mean we don't espouse and aspire to reach for moral higher authority and expect more and demand more of our children. Shame on us if we don't sound the alarm. You want to take any kind of morality and change the mores of a nation, remove any sense of higher responsibility, try to pin it on any one thing and assume the government and a piece of regulation and a rule is the solution, and then we're shocked when these things happen. We're kidding ourselves. Yes, sir.
So, you guys, I gotta tell you, I have the utmost respect for this guy, Matt Bevin. He's the governor of Kentucky. And I was watching the chat. I pulled up my phone so I could see the chat because I had to make the screen big and I could not see your comments there. But I was watching a couple of the comments. One that stood out to me was from Otto. He said, why do those that think it's okay to kill babies cry so much about dead kids when they are out of the womb? That really hits the nail on the head. Absolutely. It's so true. Will says 52% of all black people are aborted. This is, they really do not value life. And what Matt was saying here is we have taken away the valuing of life from society. And he mentioned pornography. And one of the people in the chat, I think it was Mark, had said, "What pornography has nothing to do with violence." Well, you obviously just don't know, and that's okay. There are people that have no clue. Maybe you don't have this issue. You don't know anybody that has this issue. But in the church today, between the ages of 18 and probably 35, I want to say the stat, and I may not get it perfect, but it's somewhere between 75 and 85% of young men in the church that are Christians are addicted to pornography. And you can look up pornography, the new drug. You can look all of this, fight the new drug. And one thing, and we have experienced this with the young men that we've worked with at Teen Challenge, the young men that lived here, that when
I know firsthand that some adults may not turn violent.
Right.
This is not a blanket thing.
But they've done scientific studies.
There are scientific studies that watching pornography turns you violent, and the fact that and the fact that we have to know this, we have to talk about it, is disgusting. But Pornhub has categories, right? Pornography has categories. There are rape categories. There's young categories. There's abuse categories. There's bondage categories. There's categories that make you violent. And when you
go ahead.
The idea is that when you are using somebody else for your own needs and there's no give and take,
right.
like you're giving nothing to this person. Even a service you pay, right, for a service, you're able to treat people with dignity.
Right.
The idea that you're just using a person for your own selfish needs, it literally rewires your brain.
So the scientific studies that they have done,
right,
is when men view women like objects.
It's like a hamburger. I mean, they say a piece of meat, but it goes way farther than that.
It literally turns them into, they are now not, it usually starts with the women that they are closest to, the violence. And then it just spreads to everyone in their circle of life, to just people. And Leah and I have gotten so good at this that we can go anywhere in public and somebody can smile to your face, but I don't know if it's in the spirit or whatever, we can just peg it. We can peg, okay, you're addicted to porn. And it's come out later if we get to know that person, that they've got a porn addiction. You can just feel the violence and the anger in these men because of looking at pornography.
Here's the thing, like, we're two single female sisters who have had the blessing to have men in our lives, older men who were willing to mentor us because we are single and we do own a home.
Right.
Christian men who would mentor us, who would come and teach Michelle and I how to do electric, teach us how to do drywall, teach us how to put in a window, okay? And so when we've been around these men, they have been nurturing and caring, not wanting to take anything sexually from us in their minds or in their actions. And those are the men that I want to be around. And I've been around men who, when they're looking at you, when they're talking to you, they're literally taking things from you in their minds.
Right.
And it's disgusting, and it's a violent thing that those women that are in their lives, then they treat them in a way. When you see pornography, makes women turn into sexual objects rather than in flowers that you would want to nurture and care for.
Right.
We have one of our good friends, Tim, and one of our clients. There's a long list of great men who are older, about 20, 25 years older than us, who have, and I know they're not into porn. I've talked to them about things that they're pure in their relationships and in their marriages and things like that. And so there's just such a difference. There's such a stark difference. And Michelle and I will not be around for long periods of time men who are like that. We just won't, because they're stealing from us, they're taking from us.
Right.
And then the next step is violence.
So
and
we're talking about
literally
men,
get violent.
We're talking about men here, but the problem is, like Matt Bevan was talking about, is that what's happening is there are these young men. Now, children are looking at pornography, and it is literally altering their brain patterns, and they will never ever have a normal relationship with a female in their entire lives, and it is all because of pornography. They will not know what it means to nurture, to care. This goes right into Chris Holman's video, The Virtues of Being a Man.
And it goes into this video here. I'm going to start playing here with Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson, two people I can guarantee you do not look at porn.
Guaranteed.
I guarantee you that they don't. And Jordan Peterson spends his life trying to get young men out of pornography and to give back into society and to be useful people in society. Instead of what can I take from people, that gives men the chutzpah to what can I give back to society. And that's what hang
on before you play that, because I don't want to lose this thought, because you can play that at any second, but it's really important to me to hit this point home. What was his name? Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
When they did interviews with him, he was a mass murderer, right?
Rapist.
A rapist.
Murder racing.
He said it always starts with pornography. 100% of the time. Now, does that mean that everybody that looks at pornography is going to become a rapist? He said no. But there are no rapists that do not start with pornography. And it goes, like Chris had said in the comments here, you have to have a higher high, and it goes to child porn, homosexual porn, then rape porn, and then you have to fulfill these things that you are seeing.
Goes to the gun violence and to the video games. Not everybody who plays video games is going to think, oh, hey, this is fun. I like killing people on a video game. I want to go do it, right? But then there's going to be those one or two crazies that want to do it.
Now, Chris says you can heal from porn addiction, and I want to do a plug
just like that, absolutely.
For Pure Life Ministries. If you know somebody that has a porn addiction, and the reason that I wanted to bring up the Ted Bundy thing is because there are people that get to that point. There are adulterous affairs that happen because of this, child molestation that happens because of this. And if you know somebody that is in just a porn addiction or an adulterous addiction, those kinds of things, you can go to purelifeministries.org. And they are a phenomenal ministry. You can actually get at-home help. You can go in there and you can stay, but you can also do a satellite program with them.
And for some people who just intellectually want to fight the new drug, I mean, there are guys who didn't have to go through any sort of weird detox. They just read the articles and say, wow, that's fight the new drug.
Right. All right. Patriot Gallery.
The most healthiest life is farming. Right. If you're raised on a farm and you're around food, you're around animals, you're growing things yourself, doing things for yourself, that's the healthiest thing for anybody. You will heal as you get your hands in the dirt, as you get a shovel and you dig and you turn that earth. It's better for the earthworms. You don't want to use a rototiller or a tractor. Anyways, when you get your hands dirty, you get healed and you learn from planting and stuff. But the problem is we got to get rid of the lies. Jesus said, you'll know the truth, and truth will set you free. Of course, lies are going to bind your mind. Right. A lie is meant to deceive. Your mind does not work if it has a lie in it. You know, I don't know how, but I always say salt or sugar in your gas tank. I've had it happen. Flour. They put some in my car wouldn't run. My car would not run. So I've had it happen. And that's what a lie does to your brain. Your brain's not going to work. You wonder why you overeat. You wonder why you have addictions. The biggest lie that everybody has in their mind is a dollar bill. It's a lie. It's a fraudulent piece of paper. It's just fraudulent. Gold and silver is real money for 6,000 years. It's the only thing that's fair and just. But then I was sitting in there and I'm listening to you guys talking about that. I'm like, Santa Claus. Santa Claus. Everybody, I have seen parents force Santa Claus onto their children. I mean, these parents are mean. We're going to go see Santa Claus and you're going to be happy about it. You're going to smile. They're so mean. And then you talk about it over and over and over. You brainwash this stuff into your child. They become selfish. You wonder why your child's spoiled rotten. Well, you brainwash Santa Claus. It's all about self. But then if you're teaching your child about Jesus Christ gave his life, caring about other people, wanting other people set free. So they'd be free from sin. They'd be free from lies. They could go to God. They could be loved by God. They could have the power of the Holy Spirit. Another thing, a lie takes your personal power from you. And you're confused. Why people say nobody in Sweden standing up. Well, they have too many lies in their minds. They can't defend themselves. Right. If you have lies, you can't come back with a good defense. We get angry, we get mad. Well, that's not defending yourself. You're just getting angry and mad. You're cussing up a storm. But you're not defending your country. Right. You're not defending the women and children. You're just getting mad and angry. I mean, I've seen men, my dad was furious all the time. But you know, if he would have just patiently calmed down and spent some time alone with God and find out, like this man was great. He found out what the problem was. And the problem is the Supreme Court decided to be God over all of us and tell us we can't have 10 commandments.
Which is unconstitutional. Our
foundation of all our laws is based on 10 commandments. You have anarchy when you don't have the 10 commandments.
They're all over our government buildings.
But stop lying to your children. Stop lying to yourself. And you got to go back to your childhood and tell yourself the truth about farming, about there is no Santa Claus. Jesus Christ is why we celebrate Christmas. And Jesus Christ, God loves us. He's going to heal us. Yeah. So you don't stop being selfish, but lies bind. Don't lie to people, whatever you do. And, you know, sometimes you have to lie to defend yourself, and I'm okay with that. I've lied to defend myself. in dangerous
We were just
situations.
talking about that the other day. Right.
But that's what gets an evil person. So
I love you guys in the comment. Like, seriously, like, I could
roll
just,
with it.
like, literally take one of your comments and make a whole episode out of it. It's hilarious. But I'm gonna roll with this right now. Jordan Peterson, Tucker Carlson, two highly intellectual people. If you're struggling and you have a purpose for living, watch Jordan Peterson's videos. He will change your life.
He's a psychology professor at the University of Toronto, and he just spoke with us moments ago. Here it is. Jordan Peterson, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
We wanted to ask you the question that we think too few are asking, which is, why is this happening? Why are young men shooting up schools?
Because they're nihilistic and desperate.
How'd they get that way?
Well, I think life can make you that way unless you have a purpose and a destiny, let's say.
You need a
there's no shortage of
purpose-driven
suffering
life.
and malevolence in life, and it's easy for people to become embittered by that. And if they don't see a way out, see a way forward, they get angry about it and turn against life itself. And they make a display of their hatred for being by massacring the innocent. That's what's happening. And they write that.
They do write that. It's accelerating.
Yes.
The reserve of guns has, and we've had semi-automatic rifles for 100 years, but we haven't had this number of school shootings. So the attitudes are changing, I think it's fair to say. Why
it's
are
also
more...
It's also kind of a psychological epidemic. You know, these people keep track of each other, and there's a competitive element to it. And the fact that the media insists upon publicizing the names of these shooters is not helpful, because part of what drives them is motivation for notoriety. Because notoriety is better than being ignored.
That's a really
so
good
what
point.
mistakes do you think we're making as a society to produce an ever-increasing number of young men like this?
That's a good question. I think we underestimate the necessity for young people to have clear direction and a sense of purpose in their life. They need something to offset the tragedy and malevolence of life. And we need to take these sorts of philosophical and even religious issues seriously.
So this really struck a chord with me, and I hope it does with you, because as I think back to like our Pilgrim founding fathers who came over here, they had a really big sense of purpose. And so when they died, or when their children died, it wasn't the end of life for them, because they knew that they were going to see their children or their family members again in heaven, and they knew when they died they were going to go to heaven, and they knew that they were living the best life that they could.
Right.
And they were fighting with everything they had in themselves. You need a purpose for living. You need a reason to get up every day. And what is happening
not a
with
9 to
this,
5 job. That's
on this socialist environment, when you're the idea of making yourself get up and go to school, or making yourself get up and go to a dead end job. You know, it used to be that people became had a career based on something that was needed in the community, like a blacksmith or a baker, or a candlestick maker, or a shoemaker, or a farmer, because what you did was needed and people relied on you, and you got pleasure from being able to, and fulfillment from being able to fulfill those things. Now, obviously not throughout all of history has everybody been able to fulfill themselves in a great career that they love and that is needed in society, but that should be the end goal for every person. That should be the end goal for every parent, to train their children up. And I brought this up before, and I'm going to say it again. Benjamin Franklin's father was well known in his community. Remember, Benjamin Franklin was one of the oldest founding fathers during the 1770s. So his father was actually born in, I believe, the 1600s. And so he's one of the founding families of America.
Right.
And at that time, you still had thriving trades. Mm-hmm. Cobblestone makers, bricklayers, masons, name it. There were trades to be done, and what Benjamin Franklin's
the only thing that there was to do was a trade.
So what Benjamin Franklin father did, in addition to being a wonderful, he gave advice to the community. People would come to him to answer disputes. So he was well learned in the art of diplomacy. Right. Let's put it that way. But his father would take him around as a young man to all the different trades and have him put his hand to all these different things. And he actually became proficient in almost every trade imaginable. And then he actually, I believe, chose the I believe the printing press, and he started to write things. I believe that's right, Benjamin Franklin. Sometimes I get my founding fathers a little bit mixed up. But anyways, that's the path that he went down. So what happens when parents send their kids to public school and they say, oh, the school will teach you what to do and what do you want to be, and here's this list, and everybody wants to be an actor and a singer when they're like 5, or a fireman or a policeman or things like that, but nobody's actually trained in a trade or in a purpose. So anyways.
We don't.
Do you think we're taking them less seriously than we used to?
Yes, definitely. I think that we talked in the past. We spoke much more about responsibility and responsibility in particular, but also purpose and maturity, and we valued those things highly. We didn't confuse them with tyranny and toxic masculinity, for example.
Speaking of toxic
I've seen young men. I've actually seen men a little bit younger than me sending me Jordan Peterson videos saying he's changed my life. They went from the millennial type play video game me society, which is not fulfilling.
No, not at all.
I want to be a family man. I want to provide for my family. And it's a great drive. What I see, the best thing that I see for men that gives them drive is to provide for their families. Whatever they're doing, that's what makes them get up every morning, is to get up and to provide for their families in some way.
Is it all boys?
Well, boys are more aggressive than girls, and there's a biological component to that that's quite strong. That's why the vast majority of people in prison are male. Like, on average, there's not much difference in aggression between men and women. If you picked a random woman and a random man out of the population and you had to bet on who was the most aggressive, if you bet it was the woman, you'd be right 40% of the time. But if you take the 1 in 100 most aggressive people, and those would be the people in prison, they're all men, or virtually all men. It's also why males attempt suicide less frequently, but they commit it successfully much more frequently. They're much more likely to use lethal means. And there's a very powerful biological component to that, despite what the postmodern social constructionists have to say about it. But they've got their head firmly buried in the sand, so.
Yeah, no, they're resistant to the evidence and reality. We know that. So, but given that we know that boys are the ones, if there is a school shooting, who are going to be the ones committing it overwhelmingly, shouldn't we be thinking about how to raise our boys in a way that they're less likely to do this?
I think we should be thinking about that. I mean, the book I published here, this 12 Rules for Life, is a meditation on exactly that. I've been lecturing online about the idea that responsibility is what gives life meaning, and that meaning is the antidote to the sort of nihilism and aggression and resentment that can otherwise be produced. I mean, there's no doubt that life is difficult and that people get hurt and betrayed. That's unassailable truth.
So I get it in the chat, and I get it from people. I mean, if you're on YouTube, you might not have the greatest family that you're like actively doing wonderful things in. I understand this. However, like for myself, just to give you examples, the more we do that's homesteading, like I have to get up and take care of the animals, right? We make all of our stuff from scratch.
Well,
so we try. What I mean, like our bread and things like that. So I have to get on the little bicycle. I have to do the mill. We've got plants in the basement. I've got to plant the seeds. I've got to transplant. And that's not so much that you have to. It's that you got to for like survival. And it's like it's so easy to go to the store. So it's actually way more difficult to make yourself do things when you could just go to the store and get things sometimes for cheaper. But when you do get yourself into, that's why I encourage people to farm. Even if it's just something on the balcony, tend something that needs to live. Tend to life. If you need to just water a house plant, you're tending a life. Yeah. And then you have a purpose. Like that's why they say people who have dogs are in better shape because they have to walk their dogs. You have to walk the dogs to get yourself out and you walk the dog. So it's this responsibility that people are so obsessed with, we didn't have antibiotics in the past, or people died, or they died early and life was so hard. Actually, life was way more fulfilling, even if people died earlier, even if your infants died.
We have a longer life expectancy now than back then, but our depression and dissatisfaction rates in society have skyrocketed. They are higher than they have ever been, and we have everything that we could ever want. If you go back 100 years and you were to do a prediction of everything that we have right now, just from minor conveniences,
people would
like
be
indoor
so
plumbing,
happy.
like, oh my gosh, that's the best life ever. A washing machine, all of these things. I don't have to carry wood in anymore. I would just be the happiest person. And everyone in government housing, people live better than they do in other places around the world. And yet we are so dissatisfied.
There's something very satisfying about having to chop wood to heat your house. Yes. However, if all you have to do is flip the switch, there's no satisfaction there. There's no health there.
Hang on, because I'm about to get country. Yesterday, we had worked hard all day long. We've been outside and we're hungry. All right, working hard with our chickens, cutting down the big pompous ornamental grasses and things like that. And Leah had gotten one of our chickens that we raised out of the freezer the day before. And she says, Michelle, would you make fried chicken? Well, around here, fried chicken means that chicken is a whole chicken. And you have to cut up said chicken. Well, I also had a deep fryer and the oil needed to be strained, and that took a minute. So I had to strain all of the oil through the paper towels and go through that. And I had to cut up the chicken. I had to make a batter, all right? And we didn't eat dinner until at 10 o'clock. But when we sat down and ate that fried chicken, it's called satisfaction, right, my friends. Okay, and it wasn't because it was the greatest chicken in the fried chicken in the whole world, even though it was the greatest fried chicken I think I have ever made. That's not where the satisfaction came from. It came from working hard all day long, having to even put off, maybe I'm hungry for a little bit, but it's not time to eat the fried chicken. Okay, and then cutting up the cuts of chicken and throwing them in the deep fryer and watching them.
What we're seeing
this is a satisfied
people
life.
Getting back into homesteading. It's a whole homesteading 2.0.
Yes.
So we sell our pigs to a lot of people who are doing homesteading 2.0, who have the modern conveniences, who are trying to force themselves to go without the modern conveniences. Because when you have to, when a woman has to do the laundry or she has to cook or you have to grow your own food, it actually makes you fulfilled and actually gives you a sense of purpose. And you feel good about yourself and you're appreciated. Yeah. Right? You're not appreciated if you just go get a pie from the grocery store. But if you grow the apples and you peel the apples.
Let me give y'all a tip now. Do not cut in your pie with knives. Don't use the pastry thing. I learned this just the other day. Use just your fingers. Okay? You just want to kind of mesh that in there.
I thought you had to cut the pie.
And you want to, I'm talking about make your crust, man. And you also want it as cold as possible. And you want to use half whole wheat flour. There's your pie making tips for the day.
You need something to offset that. And most people find that in their destiny, in their adoption of responsibility, in their willingness to make their own lives better and the lives of their families better and to contribute to the community and to bear the burden of being nobly. And that works. But we don't think that way anymore.
You mentioned the toxic masculinity. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I've heard the phrase a lot. What does it mean in our public conversation when someone attributes the shooting to toxic masculinity?
Well, it's an attempt to smear the idea of masculinity by confusing masculine competence with tyranny. And it's part of the underlying idea that our culture is a corrupt, tyrannical patriarchy that was run by men for the advantage of men, which is a very pathological way of looking at the world, but a very common one. And if that description is accepted, then it means that masculine energy, so to speak, whether it's manifested by women or by men, but masculine energy does nothing but prop up the...
So the word here is just simple, chivalry. Chivalry is dead. Great masculine tendencies are there to throw your coat down on a puddle. I mean, that's kind of a stupid thing to do, but people do it.
Most practical women would be like, "Hi, don't do it.
You got to wash that thing.
Just carry me up and over the puddle. It's fine. You can get your shoes wet."
Or, it's just the idea that men are like, "I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this." It's there's nothing better than seeing a man fulfill real masculinity. And we talk about these soy boys and things like that. It's not attractive. It's not and so you have these like broken relationships where you have these like soy boys and these super masculine women who want to go to work and be great CEOs and all these different things, and it just is this mesh because the greatest thing that keeps people together is the magnet that is opposites, right? So whatever, when a man is truly masculine and a woman is truly feminine, I don't see that feminine doesn't mean weak. Feminine just means that you fulfill the traits that are innate inside of you that God gave you. Okay, women tend to be more compassionate. They want to be hospitable. They want to care for children. They want to care for people. And in that, men who are in truly fulfilling their masculinity are really attracted to women who are fulfilling their femininity. And then they stick. That's why we have all this divorce, because the sticky's gone. Because men aren't masculine, are allowed to be masculine, and women are told since they're young that femininity is putting on makeup and dressing nice.
Right.
And that's what it means. That's not femininity.
Well, Doomslayer here does have a good point. It says women killed chivalry. And a couple of comments ago, somebody had said, women are very violent as well. Women are passive violence, and their violence that has swept society with this toxic masculinity.
I call it toxic femininity, but I have to let you know
that is a form of violence. It may not be a physical violence, but it is a violence towards society.
If you blame women, we're not going to fix this thing.
Right, exactly.
Okay? Because
it's not men versus women.
The truth is, honestly though, it is men versus women. It is men who literally contrived the whole feminist movement.
Yes.
Okay? Whether you know it or not, Hugh Hefner contrived the feminist movement. Don't you want to have as much sex as all these other guys are having? Don't you want to go to work? Don't you want to abort your babies? Don't you want to take birth control?
Yeah.
Literally stealing the femininity from the females.
Right.
Rockefeller's encouraged his own daughter to become this weird feminist. So it was actually the Fords and the Rockefellers and the Carnegies who wanted a nation of workers. And they also needed to, once they got the women in the workplace during World War II, they didn't want the women out of the workplace because those are extra taxpayers. And in addition, people could pay women less.
Well, and if the women are working, then somebody has to raise the children, and it might as well be the state.
Right. And it's a whole contrived. It is actually men who created the feminist movement, and it's women who are so dull in the mind that they can't see it.
Right.
And I would say women are definitely more dull in the mind in that particular area. All right. So there's a lot of different articles I wanted to share, but I want to move on to China because it's in my title, and we did a great interview with Isprod Prod, Go Against the Flow, Make Poland Great Again, and we'll get to our little Nigel video. We'll probably sum up with that, but they did an interview with Pastor Bob Fu, and he is this wonderful Chinese human rights speaker. And he's just amazing. Well, he is friends with this man here. And his name is Li Bangung, okay? And he died on Monday. And why I want to bring this up is because we have, in our realm of thinking, somehow China is okay. Somehow China's communism has been put on the back burner. I mean, we had the Olympics in China. China is not, I mean, I've heard people say China really isn't communist anymore. They're great. They're capital. We've got all of our companies going to China. All of our companies are going to China. And we're ignoring these human rights violations. We're ignoring the fact that China is communist. Their main party, they're telling you, we're the Communist Party. You cannot believe in God if you're part of our communist China. We put you in jail. And this is a lawyer who is actually trying to use the law to help Christians. And it says he was reported dead on Monday after checking in to the number 81 People's Liberation Army Hospital in Nanjing, despite friends saying that the 49-year-old was previously in good health and complained of only a minor stomach ache. After a sudden outbreak of illness, the efforts to save him failed, and he passed away. He had not done a health check recently, so we do not know if there is a long-term cause, an unnamed source with knowledge of the case told Rodgers. The hospital declined to comment on his death, as did the China's public security ministry. Li Bangyang, I don't know, received the 2008 Democracy Award for Religious Freedom from the National Endowment for Democracy for his work on behalf of persecuted Christian pastors in China. When presenting the award, Representative Frank Wolf compared Lee and his fellow honorees to other people for the challenge they posed to China's authoritarian rulers. The rest of a lack of supervision and checks and balances within China's one-party system, the Communist Party, is that China is lagging behind in advancing freedom, democracy, and human rights. They're not lagging behind. They're just fulfilling. They literally believe that Karl Marx is their venerable god. Like if you could put somebody up as a godlike figure, it's Karl Marx to them. Chairman Mao had a race with the communist China or communist Russia, saying, "You're not communist yet. You're still socialist, and we're going to be communist, full-blown communist before you get there." It was just such a weird thing. Lee said in his acceptance speech, "However, my experiences tell me that using the law to protect citizens' rights and freedoms can play a role in restricting abuses of official authority and empowering citizens in China." Bob Fu, a Chinese-American friend of Lee's, said his death was suspicious. Lee did not drink alcohol and he did not smoke. For someone's liver to fail overnight at the age of 49 is highly unbelievable. The hospital alleged that he had liver problems and that he bled to death. But Lee was previously healthy, Fu said in a statement released by his nonprofit group China Aid. China has a history of either neglecting the medical conditions of human rights activists until they succumb to them or declaring previously healthy people dead.
Yeah.
Fu described Lee as one of China's most courageous pro-constitution lawyers and said he was treated violently last year and was threatened a number of times recently by the Chinese regime. China Aid clarified that Lee was kidnapped by Chinese officials in the Yiyang province, beaten and forced to leave the area on the threat of dismemberment for defending farmers whose land was illegally taken by the government. The group flatly accused the Chinese government of murdering him. Like in the sudden death of Dr. Liu Xiaobo, the Chinese regime should be held totally accountable. The whole world should demand that the Chinese government give a full, independent, and transparent account on what caused Dr. Li's sudden death. Now,
pause. So we have Blue Guy, aka Nick, here. Nick, if you want to wait until we get through these topics and possibly we could do a Skype call, go ahead and shoot me an email.
All right, we're talking about China, and we can go back on to Parkland. Definitely. We'll take your call. We can do China another time. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. If you haven't noticed, China has a huge influence, and what they're doing in Hollywood right now is they have literally changed plot lines because China is, I guess, Hollywood's second biggest market. And you're never going to see a bad guy. They have literally rewritten lines. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to brainwash us into thinking communism's not so bad. Communism's not so bad. So this is why I need to keep my guns. You know why? Because in the past 100 years, we have seen the Bolshevik Revolution. We've seen Chairman Mao. We've seen Nazism. We've seen it all, okay? In just 100 years. Just 100 years. And if those people had their weapons, they could have held back and defended themselves. So we have communism that wants to come into our country. They haven't stopped. They've been trying since the Bolshevik Revolution. They've been trying before that. And so it is so incredibly sad when somebody uses these weapons to hurt people. All right? And from what we've been able to put together in the people, you can stop people mentally from just using their weapons, but we don't want to because we want to take people's weapons away.
Of course. Absolutely.
So, I
don't know if you guys have seen, but in pretty much every major movie nowadays, we saw it in the recent Star Wars. We saw it we've seen it, I should say, in many different of the big blockbuster movies.
Right.
Where they will specifically put in Chinese people to look like good guys and heroes. And I have no problem with Chinese people. Like, I literally don't. The fact that China has bought out Hollywood and they are making a concerted effort to
downplay communism.
Yeah.
And to
That's
brainwash
what I have a problem
children
with.
into thinking that China's just this cool place to has cool actors.
Right.
That's my point. So I'm going to show you a couple of these examples here where they put they just
being the new take on Tony Stark's arch nemesis. There was clearly no way the racially insensitive Mandarin would ever be allowed to appear on the big screen in China in his original comic book form.
In Iron Man had the Mandarin, who was a I guess a bad guy. And I didn't know this, but the weird quirky character was made up in order to not make this guy, a Mandarin, the bad guy.
So Marvel Studios and Iron Man 3 director Shane Black decided to scrap that version entirely in favor of an all-new, non-Asian fake Mandarin played by Sir Ben Kingsley.
Don't hurt the face, I'm an actor.
You got a minute to live, fill it with words.
Just a role. The Mandarin, see, it's not real.
Not real.
But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The studio also filmed a number of scenes specifically for the Chinese release, cutting in 4 extra minutes of footage filled with product placement and a new Chinese mentor for Tony Stark, Dr. Wu, who performs surgery on Stark and has a conversation with his computerized assistant, Jarvis, in Mandarin. Wow. The move backfired, however, with Chinese viewers seeing through the product placement and questioning the logic of Dr. Wu's relevance to the story, since, he had none. Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
I saw this
Hollywood
one.
movies weren't shown in China at all when the original Star Wars trilogy made waves domestically, and as a result, George Lucas' space opera just isn't very well known there. That fact showed plainly in the meager box office takings for The Force Awakens. Episode 7's poor reception was clearly a cause for concern at Disney, who made moves to ensure that 2016's Rogue One, a Star Wars story, didn't suffer the same fate. Chinese stars Zhang Wen and Donnie Yen were hired in genuine supporting roles in an effort to drum up interest in the spin-off, and their inclusion created plenty of hype. Hong Kong-born Yen, China's second biggest action star after Jackie Chan, initially refused the role of Chirrut over fears that his participation was just a marketing ploy. However, director Gareth Edwards managed to convince him otherwise. Yen told the South China Morning Post, "When the director approached me, I began by asking, quite frankly, if it's a real character, or if he's only casting me based on commercial considerations for the Chinese market. Once he told me what my character was going to be like and some of my lines, including the iconic 'May the Force be with you,' I recognized the importance of the character." Unfortunately, despite Edwards sticking to his word and even allowing Yen to choreograph his own action sequences, Chinese audiences still didn't buy it, and the film bombed there. Jonathan Papish from China Film Insider told The Wrap that the small number of Donnie Yen or Jiang Wen fans who turned out to see their faces were completely confused or bored with the rest of the story. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Disney responded to reports that Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End had suffered quite the cull at the hands of China's censors by admitting that there had been some cuts. But the Mouse House declined to elaborate further. The franchise's previous installment, Dead Man's Chest, didn't get a release at all because of its ghostly elements. So for the series' third movie, Disney was happy to part ways with a number of scenes in order to push it through. Surprisingly though, the scenes Chinese censors asked to be cut all involved Chow Yun-fat, one of the most famous action stars in Chinese cinema. It seems strange that Chinese authorities would insist on scenes featuring one of their homegrown stars being removed from the film, but they were reportedly very unhappy with Yun-fat's character, Cao Feng. The pirate lord of the South China Sea appears in traditional Qing dynasty garb with a shiny bald head and long, dirty fingernails, an image censors in the country found to be an offensive stereotype. Most of the scenes setting up the character were deleted, making his sudden appearance and death very confusing to Chinese audiences. The Hunger Games Mockingjay, Part 1. China insists that 14 of the 34 Hollywood films it approves for mainland screening each year must be presented in either 3D or IMAX. Formats that have proven incredibly popular thereafter heavy investment in the technology. Lionsgate used this to their advantage when it came to releasing The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 in China, hoping to improve upon the disappointing returns of the previous installment, Catching Fire. The first part of the franchise finale was converted to 3D, especially for China, and when it easily bested the previous films at the box office, Part 2 was given the same treatment, converting movies to...
You guys may be wondering, okay, what does all this have to do with anything? Right. Here's the thing. China is a communist country.
Yes.
They are making moves and counter moves to set things up around the world so that they look like the good guys. And it's not just China. Again, it is a concerted effort by the globalists to make communism okay, to make it appealing. If you get Chinese actors in these movies, then these American kids that are just stupid, we're like, oh wow, that's so cool.
Well,
you have these SJWs that it brings it down to a level they can understand.
China's pernicious Confucius Institutes out of U.S. colleges. So the FBI director, Christopher Wray, revealed last week, it kind of brings it all together, that his agency is taking investigative steps regarding Confucius Institutes, which operate at more than 100 American colleges and universities. These Chinese government-funded centers teach a whitewashed version of China and serve as outposts of China's overseas intelligence network. The other headline today is that China's President Xi Jinping wants to consolidate power, and he is censoring and cracking down on anybody who says anything against him. What he wants to do, he's not actually allowed to run for re-election. So he wants to become basically emperor of China. And they have, Chinese censors have gone into overdrive, banning just about every phrase that could be conceivably used to express even the mildest objection to Xi's imperialist ambition. I don't agree. Migration, immigration, re-election, election term, constitution amendment, constitutional rules, proclaiming oneself emperor, Winnie the Pooh, which is his online nickname, were among a host of phrases that were banned by Chinese people from using online. Wow. And these are the people who are telling people in Hollywood, China's great. We're great. But in China, they ban you from even saying election term or even talking about it. Anyone found trying to enter the Chinese words was greeted with a messaging information saying the content violates the relevant laws and regulation.
The only one I agree with is Winnie the Pooh. I don't think they should be allowed to say that word.
Stop it. Weibo is restricting that's their internet, is restricting messages users could post. Weibo also banned certain search terms, according to China Digital Times. In contrast, the top 10 trending searches on Free Weibo, a website that offers an unrestricted view of content on the service, all reflected responses for the news. China Digital Times asked for readers helping in compiling a grass, mud, horse list of the keywords banned on Weibo. The list is gigantic, as it includes a number of specific word combinations that might expose Chinese users to unacceptable ideas. While banning the individual words would be impractical, for example, Chinese citizens can search for the internet for explosions, but not certain explosions the government would rather you not talk about.
Wow.
The list of banned search terms have been piling up for some time, but its growth surged after Xi made his move for a lifetime presidency and permanent control. Emperor Xi. The BBC notes that China employs millions of people to monitor and censor internet activity, so they have the manpower to micromanage discourse and prevent popular unease. Now, China is also actually actively making each person based on a huge list of criteria. You don't have the article up. A huge list of criteria, where you work, what kind of education you have, what kind of person you are, how many kids you have, and giving you a valued number. So that when you do go to be employed, whatever your number is, right, people can find your number. This is the essence, the pinnacle of communist dream. Says, for example, the censors have been able to hunt and kill provocative Weibo posts, such as, it took over 100 years to overthrow imperialism and 40 years of reform and opening up. We cannot return to this type of system. As the BBC explains, China's thought police are especially keen on blocking references to emperors and monarchs, searches for information. Remember, communism was starting to overthrow an emperor, and now communism inevitably creates emperors. But I want you guys
to see some similarities here as Leah's going through this. You're seeing everyone can see what China is doing on censorship. I think on the right and the left, it doesn't matter. They're like, yeah, they are pretty much censored. But some people may say, oh, that's all right. At least we can agree that they are incredibly censored. That is what they are trying to get to here in the United States, right, using YouTube, using Google, anything that they can to censor things that they just don't like, that doesn't ascribe to I don't even want to say government ideals, because our government is split down the middle. It's got all this craziness to it, but the deep state, the globalist agenda, if it doesn't align with that, then it must be censored. This is communistic practices happening right now.
He is here today and forever, with no political rivals within the leadership or in civil society, said Dr. Feng Chojing of the University of Technology, Sydney. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because this is the essence that's kind of going, like Michelle said, behind our government censorship. Back to these universities, Christopher Wray, our FBI director, was responding to a question from Marco Rubio, who called the Confucius Institutes complicit in China's larger efforts to covertly influence public opinion. Earlier this month, Rubio sent a letter to Florida schools urging them to shut down their Confucius Institutes. I have spent a year and a half studying Confucius Institutes. I found they misled students about China's history and pressured American scholars to keep quiet about China's unsavory policies, going in, forcefully taking babies out of people's wombs, forcefully sterilizing people. By the way, the Chinese director of one institute told me that if a student asked about Tiananmen Square, she would show a picture and point out the beautiful architecture. Another stripped faculty doors of banners referencing Taiwan. And remember, there was another piece in here where they had to take a Tibetan monk out of a thing because Tibet doesn't exist, right? Colleges and universities should close their Confucius Institutes voluntarily. And first make colleges choose between China's gifts and federal funding. American colleges accept China's money to teach Chinese language and culture, but the federal government already awards grants for the same purpose. So, pick one. Secondly, require financial transparency. The public should know how much money foreign governments pour into colleges and universities. The Higher Education Act requires colleges and universities to disclose gifts of $250,000 or anything like that. So you have to recognize that China is pouring money into these institutes and pouring money into brainwashing people on every level. I mean, they're trying to create this great Silk Road and take over. And no, we can't allow Chinese communists, as much as we might love the Chinese people.
There should still be massive sanctions against China because of their human rights violations.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that when we buy a product from Walmart and it says made in China, it's made with slave labor. And yet we allow it to continue. The leftists allow it to continue. The people on the right allow it to continue. And it's wrong. There should just be a blanket, you know what? Say no to China rule, just like North Korea. Say no to North Korea. These people are committing civil rights violations, and you cannot come to the pit table. You cannot play the game until you stop treating people as if they are slaves.
Right.
It's just a thing.
Does Blue Man want to do
So we are going to do an interview with Blue Guy. I'm curious if you don't want to
stop
this video. We're going to round this off. We didn't get to Nigel. I'll take that out of the title. We can do that tomorrow. There's always plenty of time. But since we have Nick, for those of you that don't know, don't remember, or didn't see it, 2 weeks ago today, we were going live about the massacre that happened at the school in Parkland, Florida. And one of the students who was there today, Blue Guy is his name on YouTube, and Nick is his name in real life, popped in the chat. Some of you guys were questioning whether he was a real person. He pulled out his yearbook. He's got all the credentials. So I've been in touch with him, and he has just showed up in the chat, and we want to do an interview with him. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to sign off here, and then we're going to come back with Blue Guy. But I do want to, lastly, I know Sean and Tracy missed it at the beginning of the show. Wish them a very, very happy anniversary.
Yes.
All right, you guys, we love you. God loves you. God bless. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory.
If it's the truth.
Like, comment, and subscribe to Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks. Ring the bell for notifications. Find us on Facebook.
Follow us on Twitter.
All right, you guys, we will be back here in probably no less than 5 minutes. Let me just get this queued up, and we'll get Nick on the line, and we will be back with you guys in a few. God bless.
I was cold all alone. No place for home every day. So afraid, but you call my name.